Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Fans OCC, where I take an original creature or concept from a concept artist and recreate it using my own style. In this video, we'll be looking at a concept called Luna by Roman Cherepov, a Latvian concept artist specializing in creature design. Each of his illustrations are unique and have a very clear characteristic towards the subject that he has drawn. I would highly recommend that you go and have a look at all the work that he's done. I'll leave his links in the description box below so you can check out his portfolios. Also, if you haven't already, please like, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel to get more videos in the future. With that being said, let's jump straight into ZBrush. So inside of ZBrush, I started off with a couple of primitive shapes. Then using Dynamesh and a few basic brushes, I started to manipulate the model to fit the silhouette of the concept provided. Speaking of concepts, this one today is from a Roman Cherepov, a concept artist, freelance concept artist, and this piece is called Luna. So what intrigued me about the concept is the simplicity of the actual model or the drawing that he's created. It's very simple, but at the same time, the balance between large and small shapes really works, and you can kind of see the movement of the character within the still image that he's created. And I would highly recommend that you go to his ArtStation and have a look at other concepts that he's drawn. He is very talented at creating anatomy and creature design and coming up with some very intriguing and interesting looking concepts. So returning to the sculpt, I just started to manipulate the basic primitive shapes still, working on the body for some detailing using the trim dynamic brush and the clay buildup brush, and just basically creating shapes on shapes on shapes, working on the head, getting that crater in the face in the middle, and very shortly I'll start to create the fingers for our creature using the cylinder, and then just duplicating, rotating until I get a kind of finger shape going, and then I'll merge that, manipulate it using the move brush and the smooth brush, and then position that into the placement of the hand. And then once I'm happy with the placement of the fingers, I'll then just start to merge it to the actual hand itself as well. So once I was happy with the way the fingers looked, I haven't merged them yet. I started moving on to the lower legs and creating some hard surface shapes using trim dynamic brush. And then it's back to the body. So I like to bounce around my model when I'm sculpting. I don't like to stay in one place for too long. And I also like to keep the models as symmetrical as possible until I'm absolutely happy with how the detail is and how it sort of looks. And if there is a asymmetrical character like the one we have now, then I would change to asymmetrical modeling once I was happy with the sort of shapes that I was getting from the basic forms. So right now you can see that I'm modeling in asymmetry, but later on I'll actually delete the right hand and mirror over again, because it was a lot of work to incorporate those fingers into the hands in the sculpting. So instead of having to do it twice and then twice asymmetrically, I did it once on one side, mirrored it over to the other side, and then made it asymmetrical again. Now I'm just going onto the body and adding some very basic details like some craters here and there using the clay buildup brush, just playing with the shapes and the forms. I don't like commit to adding very fine details at this stage. We are very much still in the Dynamesh model at a very low res, so it'll be pointless us using detail pass on a model that's just not got the topology to support it. So right now you can see I'm mirroring it over again once I'd finished sculpting the hand, so that it's symmetrical on both sides, but then I'll use the move brush to change the shapes later. Using standard brush with some alphas now, just trying to figure out the best way to put these craters on the character, as well as manipulating the shape further using brushes that I've created in the past. And I found this one from the mutant brush set that I created, and this one was boil number 3, and instead of having it on Z add, I put it on Z sub, and it's pretty good for creating some crater like features on the character. Now I'm using trim adaptive brush, and as you can see, it's a lot more harsher and stronger than trim dynamic, and it also cuts into the model a little better than trim dynamic does, giving a bit of a hard edge to the area that you're trying to define. And I'll just go around the whole sort of model, making sure that it has some flat surfaces like rocks do incorporated onto it, and then using a standard brush, I wanted to make sure the crater in the middle had a bit of an explosion, so it looked like it exploded outwards. So just adding some ridges around the edges of that crater, and then using the trim dynamic, I'd start to fill in those gaps to make it a little harder instead of a softer. I also found a really cool alpha, which is an actual crater alpha, which I had in my library, and I decided to use that to enhance some of those craters to make it look a bit more realistic. So this is not the first rock creature or character that I have created. I have another one called The Thing, which is from the Fantastic Four comic books. My own personal recreation of him and how I would imagine him to be in the Marvel universe. And if you go, you can check that video out as well, and I kind of explain what I'm doing in that video in a bit more detail. So it's not just characters that I've created using rock techniques. I've also created environmental art for films such as The Adam Project with Ryan Reynolds, and also Citadel, the Amazon Prime show. And for Adam Project, I actually worked on the canyon chase scene, where I helped work on the rocky textures of the mountains alongside other artists from DNEG who are very skilled in their job, and it was a really, really cool project to work on, and I'm so happy that I had the chance to work on it. Returning to the sculpt, I'm now just going around with this trim adaptive again, making some textures, rock textures, breaking up the legs on the bottom and splitting them up so that I have like a foot and a thigh. After which I just use the trim adaptive brush as well as some alphas to create some detail on those feet. So once I'm happy with how the legs are looking, I start to manipulate them a little bit further, try and create some asymmetry on them, and it's at this point that I start to abandon the symmetrical sculpting and just go full on asymmetry sculpting, doing one side first and then the next side afterwards. Still using very basic brushes, the trim adaptive, the smooth brush, the damn standard brush, the move brush, any very basic brushes. I'm someone who likes to keep it simple. I don't like to use too many complex brushes to work with. So now I'm just adding some more alphas of these craters, going into the face, or what would be the face, and just adding a bit more detail there. It'll probably be mostly the focal point of our character, so I wanted to make sure that it was very detailed. Now I'm just going to add some floating rocks. These would be the ones that are sort of in the concept. You can see they kind of just float around the body as if trapped within the gravitational pull of the character. It's really cool though, these little rocks that he's drawn. It kind of fills in those gaps a little bit more, and it kind of sort of also helps with the silhouette of the character. Same exact thing I did with all the other models. I basically started off with a primitive, then used trim adaptive, trim dynamic, some alpha maps. The one thing I did do though to speed up the process is just copy and paste that model into different areas and just change the rotation of the rock to make it fit and to make it look more randomized. Very good trick. You don't want to have to sculpt it every time. You want to get in and just make a simple rock and then just reuse it multiple times. So we're coming up to the detailing stage now, and that's as simple as getting an alpha that is a rock alpha or rocky texture and just plastering it over the whole thing, giving it that noise and that breakup on the surface. I don't want to spend too much time on that. Again, this is a very quick speed sculpt concept from a concept, so I didn't want to spend too much time detailing what would eventually be a rocky texture, which I could add on later on inside of Photoshop anyway, once I've rendered out my images. Just coming in with a damp standard, adding some more detail, and then I'm finally coming into the texturing stage. So again, keeping it simple, making the whole thing gray using the skin shader material underneath, and then using a lighter color on top to highlight the top, keeping some of those darker tones underneath. And then using masking tools, I then start to mask out using the cavity mask to get some variation on the surface, sort of a grey surface, a darker grey surface. And that's pretty much it. I just use the basic masking parameters and masking tools that ZBrush comes with, and try to make it look rocky and moon-like, moon texture-like. Again, a lot of the actual textures and final parts will come later on inside of Keyshot and Photoshop, but this is just me putting some basic colors down so it does not look so boring once we take it into Keyshot. Now moving on to the transpose or posing of our character, and I'm just going ahead and masking out those individual rocks and then just posing it to match the concept. And that's basically all I did inside of ZBrush. The next video, or the next part of this video, will be inside of Keyshot, and I'll just run you through a quick brief walkthrough on how I used Keyshot to render out this character. So I'll see you in 1 minute. Hey guys, if you're interested in learning how to sculpt and composite characters, then visit my online stores for in-depth tutorials, models, brushes, and more. Just follow the links in the description box below. Also, if you enjoy this content, then please like, share, and subscribe for more videos in the future. Now, let's get back to the video. So once I'm happy with the pose, I'll take this model into Keyshot and start to render it. Now, I have a tutorial on my online store on how I do the rendering inside of Keyshot. If you want, you can go check that out. The links are in the description box below. But essentially what I'm trying to do is just get a nice looking render to take into Photoshop and to composite later on. So I'm trying to get some good shadows, some good lighting, environment lighting as well onto my model. It gives that sense of realism that ZBrush can't get when you're using the rendering system inside of ZBrush. So that's a plus for using Keyshot. I myself prefer the ZBrush to Photoshop method because I have more control over the layers that I created and rendered out of ZBrush. But this is also a very good method to use because you get a much more realistic lighting scenario for your character and rendered images. So right now I'm just finishing off the final touches to this image, and I'm going to start to render out each individual image to take into Photoshop and to composite later on. So check back with me in 1 minute when we'll be inside of Photoshop to composite this character. Okay, so we're now inside of Photoshop, and what I've done is I've just brought in all the renders from Keyshot and just layered them in the layer section accordingly. The purpose of making those renders is to composite this image into a conceptual piece, making it interesting to the eye, as well as trying to convey the model in a finalized state that you might see in film or in game to the director or art director. So the main goal is just to make it look really nice. So with the concept art not having any color and being a black and white image, it actually left a big opening of how I could sort of portray this character in an environment. So I just started to play around with some blue hues, made the ground slightly reflective of this, as if it was sort of on a planet with water. But the main focus is always about the character. So you'll find that later on I'll actually make the areas around him darker and the actual image of him lighter. So he pops back, or he pops off the background more. And essentially what I'm doing is just trying to make a nice looking render, really. Using some simple brushes inside of Photoshop, lots of layers. I love to use lots of layers when I'm working in Photoshop. Using some special brushes for clouds or smoke, and then some particle effects, as well as some images from the internet. So you'll see in a minute that there'll be a smoke or sand effect or image pop in, and I'll just use that to enhance the image further. So there you can see now I'm just enhancing it further, as if this cloud or the wind is actually spraying against him and all the particles of sand is falling off him to the right hand side. Just find that it actually helps give the character more character and a bit more movement with the way he is posed. Plus, it's those little touches that actually sell the concept further. You could have a really amazing looking character and have him look really cool, but there's nothing much going on. But if you can tell a story about the character, so he's sort of, in my version, it's kind of wandering through this world or on this planet, and the wind is howling, and you can see that it's kind of pushing the sand off him at the same time. I wanted to try and portray a story with this character through visual elements. And at the end of the day, that is the whole point of why we composite our image as a concept artist in Photoshop afterwards. We're trying to sell the idea of the character. We're trying to bring life to your sculpture from ZBrush. As you'll see now, I'm just working some images that I found from online just to give that texture a little bit more bump to it and a little bit more interest to the character's surface. It's a cheap trick to use, but it works really well when you're doing concept art, so you don't have to worry about having to detail it all inside of ZBrush and sculpt it all inside of ZBrush, which can be very, very tiresome, as well as you won't get that level of detail that you would if you just used a picture from online. And finally, we just used a couple of adjustment layers to finish off the image. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'd like to thank Roman Cherepov for letting me use his lunar concept in this video. And if you can, please like, share and subscribe to my channel to get more videos in the future. Plus, it will help me reach that 100,000 subscriber goal that I have for my YouTube channel. Please also comment in the comment section below if you like this video. I will try to get to every single one as much as I can. And thank you very much to everyone. Take care.